Okay, continuing in the laws of Bishul. Okay, bottom line is like this. You're not allowed to put any spices into a kli rishon, the first vessel, definitely not when while it's on the fire. Even if it's off the fire, if it's still yatsa ledesbo, if it's still hot enough to cook. The Arab Poskim and Alter Rebbe says that also, that you should try not to put anything into a kli rishon, even if it's not very hot, just to not get used to the fact, to get used to the fact you don't put anything inside the kli rishon. So you can't put spices. But in a klei sheni, we learned you can put spices. The only spices you can't put, according to the Alter Rebbe, would be salt. So if the klei sheni is yatsa ledesbei, it's hot. If it's cold, it doesn't matter. If it's still yatsa ledesbei, over 110 degrees, so according to Alter Rebbe, you're not allowed to put salt. And so therefore, if you have a bowl of soup, so if the bowl of soup is a kli sheni, you cannot put any salt in. If the bowl of soup is a kli shlishi, because the ladle then would be a kli sheni, and then the bowl of soup would be a kli shlishi, then you would be allowed to put the salt into it. But sugar and salt, we said, it cooks even in a kli sheni. What? Even if it's not a davar gush. Even if it is. Davar gush, according to many opinions, even if it's a kli shlishi. I said it's a machlekes if kli shlishi helps by davar gush. So some poskim want to say, Lubavitch poskim want to say it's good, other Lubavitch Rabbonim say it's not good. According to Alter Rebbe, it's the question what Alter Rebbe really holds.
And if the salt was the type of salt that was...
No difference.
That was a process that was nebushal already?
So the Alter Rebbe holds you still can't. You still cannot. Hot sauce is liquid. So again, if the chont is a kli shlishi, you could do it. If the chont is a kli sheni, you can't, because it's a davar gush. But if you hold that the davar gush, even in the kli shlishi, you can't, so then you wouldn't be allowed to put the hot sauce. But a lot of, again, people are lenient, people are machmer, whatever they do, it's fine. Now, what happens if you have an urn that was emptied out? And it's still very hot, and you want to put cold water in just to warm up. So you emptied out the urn, or a hot kli rishon, now is empty, but you're not allowed to put a little bit of water in there, because that water is going to get cooked. If you put a lot of water at one time into the empty kli rishon, so then it's not going to cook, because on the contrary, the water is going to cool off the kli rishon rather than the... I said not if it's on. If it's on the fire, then for sure you can't. Okay, next. Okay, so how do you warm up? Give me an example. How do you warm up, let's say, a baby bottle on Shabbos? You have a baby bottle, or for an adult, whatever. You have cold orange juice. You don't want to have cold orange juice. You want to have warmed up, or they're not so cold. You want to have a room temperature, but it's coming straight from the fridge. So what do you do? So you can't put it into a kli rishon, because the kli rishon is going to cook it. Even though this was pasteurized already, it was cooked. But nevertheless, we learned if the liquid is cold, so then it does become recooked. But we learned before that Alter Rebbe holds that no liquids cook in a kli sheni. So therefore, if somebody, let's say, wants to warm up a baby bottle, or whatever, and this, let's say they have the practical thing they use is a kvort that you wash with, right? The Tis Yadayim case is called a kvort. So I want to warm up a baby bottle. So what I could do is take from a kettle or from an urn, put water into this bowl, and then take the baby bottle and put it in the hot water. So it's a kli sheni. Kli sheni cannot cook liquids, so therefore there wouldn't be a problem. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is when you have hot and cold, zadin in Yoredeya, zadin in Hol Shabbos, zadin in Hol Pesach. If you have hot and cold, in other words, I said like this. Let's say you have half a container of very hot water. And now I pour in cold water, or juice, or whatever, milk, or whatever it may be. So Who wins over whom? Does the bottom make the top hot, or does the top make the bottom cold? So in halacha, the halacha is, it's called tata govad. The bottom wins. That means if I have not a drop of water, but I'm saying, let's say I have half a glass of hot water, and I pour cold water into it, so then this water is going to cook this water. Unless if it's a klisheni, then it can't cook, so it's not an issue. But let's say it's a klirishin, okay? I have a half a cup of hot water, and now I'm going to pour in cold juice. So because the bottom is hot, that's going to be victorious. It's going to cook the liquid rather than the liquid cooling off the hot water. But if I have cold water at the bottom, so let's say I want to dilute orange juice with very hot water. So what I could do is I could put orange juice in the bottom, okay? And then when I pour even from a klirishin over the orange juice cools off the water rather than the water cooking the oranges. So that would be another way, but that's only if you want to dilute it. Or just take the bottle or the container or the glass or whatever and put it into a klisheni, and then it's not a problem. What?
If you have a very large klirishin on fire, and you put a second pot into the first pot. The first pot's filled with the first klirishin.
When do you put the second pot in?
Into the first pot.
When? On Shabbos? Or before Shabbos? No,
before Shabbos, let's say.
before Shabbos, but then it's on the fire also.
So the question is, does the second kli become a klirishin?
For sure, for sure. We only learned a ladle that we learned. If you leave it in for an extended period of time, there are opinions that say it becomes a klirishin. Why not? Because the walls were not cooked on the fire. Here you're putting a pot in a pot while it's being cooked. So the inside pot is also heated directly from the fire. So that has a complete din of a klirishin. So let's say somebody wants to make a cup of instant coffee on Shabbos. Okay? So what you're not allowed to do for sure is let's say over here, yeah? So you take a cup, you put the instant coffee into the cup, and then the sugar into the cup. And then you put it under the urn and turn on the hot water. Okay? That is for sure you're not allowed to do. Because you're pouring from a klirishin onto the stuff, it cooks it k'dei klipa, the whole thing is becoming cooked, and that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. What you have to do, one second. What you have to do is first take from the kettle, pour the hot water into a cup. Now the cup is a klisheni. Okay? So then, some people rather do a klishlishi, but in technical halacha, it's not so bad, not according to all opinion, but if you, let's say, first put in the hot water, and then you add the coffee and the sugar, that's not so bad. Because those are spices that are not going to become cooked in a klisheni. But you can definitely not pour from an urn directly on top of instant coffee, or tea bags, or sugar, or Splenda, or whatever. Yeah. Yom Tov you can cook. Yom Tov is not a problem. You can do all that stuff on Yom Tov. All these dinim, the cooking you can do. What?
What happens when you use the klisheni and you want to refill it, and there's always those droplets?
We're going to get to that soon. A little bit we talked already, but soon. I just want to finish this point. So if you want to make a coffee, there's even a better way halachically to do it, is you put the coffee and sugar in a cup. You pour it from the urn into a cup, and then pour it from the cup over the coffee and sugar. So then it's idui from klisheni, which definitely, almost according to everybody, cannot cook. So that's the best way, by the way, of doing it. Or just make a klishlishi and then add the coffee and sugar. But halachically, there's no problem taking a glass, fill it up with, put instant coffee with sugar in it, pour from an urn into a cup, and pour the cup, which is now a klisheni, over the coffee and the sugar, and there's no problem with that either. But one thing is for sure, to take coffee straight from the urn, pour this straight from the urn or the kettle directly over the coffee or sugar or tea for that matter is definitely not allowed to do.
Some people say instant coffee is cooked already.
Instant coffee is cooked already. First of all, that's not so simple. Instant coffee is roasted. They're roasted. Now roasting, we learned, is cooking after roasting. There's an interesting tshuva. The Mechaz Yitzchak has a whole long tshuva about Nescafe. He has a whole letter from the company. In the tshuva, he has a whole letter from the company. This is going back a long, long time ago. How they make the coffee. But the problem is it's roasted. That's number one. Secondly, according to the Alter Rebbe, there's another issue. The question is, what din the sugar and coffee that dissolves immediately in water, what din does it have? Is it a din of liquid or is it a din of food? I'll tell you where there's another thing where it applies, that the Tzemach Tzedek says you're not allowed to do it. We learned you're not allowed to squeeze a fruit into an empty cup or into liquid. But you're allowed to squeeze a lemon directly onto food. Like if you have a salad, okay, vegetable salad, and you want to take a lemon on Shabbos and squeeze it over the salad, you're allowed to do it. Why? Because the din is liquid that goes onto a food has a din of food. That's whatever, that's the halacha. So therefore, halachically, I can take a lemon on Shabbos, I can squeeze it directly over a salad. I cannot squeeze it into tea, I cannot squeeze it into an empty cup, you're not allowed to, because it's squeezing. So now some poskim hold, so if I want to squeeze lemon into tea, what I could do is as follows. I'll take a spoon of sugar, squeeze the lemon onto the sugar, because sugar is food, and then that's not squeezing. And then I could put the lemon sugar into the cup of tea. But Tzemach Tzedek clearly writes you're not allowed to do that. He talks about that case exactly, writes you're not allowed to do it, because when the Alter Rebbe holds and Tzemach Tzedek also like that, a lot of poskim hold like this, that sugar and salt and those types of things that dissolve in liquid have a din of liquid, not solid. So when I pour lemon onto sugar, it's not going onto food, it's going into liquid. Because they dissolve very easily, so therefore it's not a din of food, it's a din of liquid. What?
Would it change, for example, if it was cubed? I know it's the same thing,
Same
but
thing.
even though it takes longer.
Doesn't matter. Sugar and all those things, even if it's cubed, it still has a din of liquid. What? So if somebody, let's say, wants to put a slice of lemon into tea. Okay? So now, if the tea is in a kli sheni, you cannot put the lemon into the tea because you're going to cook the lemon. If the tea is in a kli shlishi, then your kli shlishi doesn't cook the way we hold, and therefore it's not going to cook the lemon. So therefore you could cut a slice, you can't squeeze the lemon, but you can cut a slice of lemon and put it into tea. Now what some people do, especially when it comes to tea, because tea has a lot of issues, we'll just start it now and to be continued. The problem with tea is a few things. Number one, cooking. Secondly, there is an issue because when you put a tea bag in tea, what you do is actually pick it up and down to steep it. What's it called? I think steeping it's called, yeah? So now the question is, I'm not saying it's forbidden, I'm saying the question is that called straining? Because now you're straining the liquid out of the tea bag, through the tea bag, which is a strainer, really. And then you have a third question, which is really not an issue. Are you coloring it? Now we learned there's no coloring by food. But the question is, are you coloring the tea bag? Or are you coloring the string of the tea bag? So that really is not an issue. Why isn't that aspect of it an issue, coloring? Because we learned you're ruining it. You take a napkin, you make kiddush, your hands are full of wine, you take a napkin and you're not coloring the napkin, you're destroying it. You're destroying the tea bag, you're destroying the string, you're not coloring it. Nobody said, I just colored the tea bag. The only question is straining, but then the question is also, then for sure you need to use a kli shlishi. Some people hold you allowed to go up and down. They hold it's not straining. Many poskim hold it is straining. And what a lot of people do, by the way, interesting, they don't do it so much nowadays. In the olden days, I remember growing up like this, they would make before Shabbos tea essence. Before Shabbos, they cooked up a kettle. They took, let's say, 4 tea bags, put it into a glass, poured water over the tea bag, and let it sit there. So now you have an concentrated tea. But now it's liquid. So you don't have a problem with straining and coloring and all that. Plus, there's less of a problem with bishul, because liquid can't cook in a kli sheni. So then you put water into a kli sheni, and then you add the essence, and it's very concentrated, so you need a little bit of tea essence, and then you do it that way. Then the poskim right, that's the best way of doing it. Same thing with coffee, by the way. Some people would make coffee essence. Most people don't do it, but some people would make coffee essence the same way. They'll make a very, very strong coffee in a glass, concentrated, and then they'll put a kli sheni, and then they'll add the liquid coffee into the kli sheni, so it wouldn't be a problem. But again, most then you don't have to do it. You could do it the other way.